So it's official. My show with Dr. Nehemia Gordon happens at 11 a.m. on Monday. And this reminds me that there is a tractate in the Talmud which describes how the best way to open up a serious dialogue with a Jew is by joking. You've got to open up with a joke. And because I don't have that in me without potentially offending someone, I probably will not go that route. But it's an honor that ex-Pharisee turned Karaite, Dr. Nehemia Gordon, is going to sit down to talk with me. Now, what's really awesome about this, and all praise to the Most High, is that a lot of people in the Judahite house, particularly the Talmudic Judahite part of the house, they want to persecute those of us who do the words of Elohim according to Tanakh and believe in the divine Mashiach. Now, the ones who are reasonable and want mediation, that's excellent, because for the most part, according to the prophecies, there will not be any peace until the Mashiach returns. Now, one thing I'd like to mention is the fact that many in the house of Judah conceive of us as cows and pigs and thieves because we are taking or allegedly stealing their religious traditions, and we're basically doing Torah and Tanakh without converting halakhically. And the reality is the Talmud serves as replacement theology, which is something that Nehemia and I largely agree upon. And it is similar to the jihadists and the Muslims who say you should either convert, you should be subject to extra taxes as a second-class citizen, or die. In the Talmud, we see that the reality is a lot of these people either want us to be halakhically / Orthodox Jewish, or to submit to their enslavement program, also called the 7 Laws of Noah, or die because we refuse to give up Yeshua as the Messiah. Now, we can also talk about the roles of the Messiah. I know that according to the Essene sect and the Dead Sea Scrolls, there is plenty of messianic dualism. There's an Aaronic Messiah, and then there's a King Messiah. And with Orthodox Judaism, there's a Messiah son of Joseph and a Messiah son of David. Now, what's interesting is the Orthodox Jews strongly believe that the Messiah son of Joseph would go to the northern house of Ephraim and try to convert a bunch of Christians to Orthodox Judaism. What really sets us apart, though, in the Ephraimite movement is we look specifically for the Tanakh prophecies. We don't listen to the filthy words of the sages where they perverted what is written in the scriptures. For example, there are even midrashim that boil down to opinions about how when the Messiah comes back, there can be no physical coins in Israel. And I don't know if that paints the picture of the Messiah being a technocrat or financial transactions no longer taking place before the Mashiach comes. But the 66 books of the Bible are explicitly clear that until Mashiach returns, economic activity, even marital activity, will continue until then. Now, what we see in Matthew chapter 10, verses 17 through 18 is Yeshua warning the disciples that they would be persecuted in both the rabbinic courts and the Roman courts. He says, "But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to councils and scourge you in their synagogues. You will be brought before governors and kings for my sake as a testimony to them, the Jews, and to the Gentiles." So, why will Jewish persecution and Gentile persecution ensue against the Christian house of Joseph? And the reason is because the Christian house of Joseph does not submit either to the rabbinic authorities or to the authorities of the church and the Roman holidays that they do. Now, in the Judahite ideology, there is no such thing as a divine Mashiach or a suffering servant. However, in Luke chapter 2, verses 33 through 35, we read, quote, "The child's father and mother were amazed at what was spoken about him. Then Simeon blessed them and said to his mother Mary," so this is about Yeshua, "Behold, this child is anointed to cause the rise and fall of many in Israel," and that is in both the Judahite and Josephite houses, because they're going to lack understanding about what the heck is going on here, and to be a sign that will be spoken against. Well, the rabbinates speak a ton against Yeshua. It says, "So that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed." Well, there's a lot being revealed about the Judahites, and that is their hearts are not with Elohim. and his program. And it says, and a sword will pierce your soul as well. In other words, there are going to be so many people who just can't put their finger on who this Yeshua guy is, and they won't understand his mission or his purpose, particularly to first save the Josephite house. He's going to leave people's very spirits divided about his identity. And one of the common Judahite claims is that the Messiah has not come because the temple has not been restored. Now, they do have a point in the sense of, yes, there are Tanakh prophecies that say the Mashiach is supposed to restore the temple and temple worship and the Levitical priestly system. That is completely accurate, which is why we read in Zechariah chapter 6, verses 12 through 13, tell him, this is what the Lord Almighty says. Here is the man, who I believe will be Yeshua in the future millennial reign, whose name is the branch, and he will branch out from this place and build the temple of the Lord. It is he who will build the temple of the Lord, and he will be clothed with majesty and sit and rule on his throne, and he will be a priest on his throne, and there will be harmony between the two. The only difference between what the Judahites see versus what I see is that Yeshua is the King Messiah, but what they need to understand is that during his first advent, he did not come in the role and function of King Messiah. He came in the role and function of suffering servant. Of course, if I lived back in Maimonides' day, he was very clear that it would be much easier to expedite the process against the Minim rather than going to the Beit Din by just throwing them into a ditch. And you know what's really interesting about that claim? Doesn't it align a lot with what Genesis 37 talks about as far as brother Judah wanting to first kill brother Joseph, but then the brothers agreeing that it would be more appropriate to throw Joseph into a ditch? Yeah, so have times changed, or are we seeing that there's nothing new under the sun? And it's funny because when I tell people I keep Torah and Tanakh, they give me this look and then they say, oh, okay, so you're Jewish. The funny thing about that is such an NPC reply. I'm not even going to lie right now. Because actually keeping the Torah and Tanakh, what I am finding, as it is written, is one of the least Jewish things you can do. And the reason is because the whole Jewish religion has completely distorted the words of Torah and Tanakh, and they're actually doing the words of the rabbis over the words that are written in Torah and Tanakh. I know, shocking, right? Keeping the Torah as it is written is one of the least Jewish things you can do. And part of why I say this is because there's this whole debate about Genesis chapter 18, where Abraham serves milk, meat, and butter to the three men who are with him, and one of the men being Yahweh or Adonai, the Lord. And it's interesting because rabbinates will attempt to explain away this text to justify their belief that you cannot have milk with meat. One of the ways in which they do this is they say, well, the Torah and oral Torah were not yet given at Sinai, so God had not established his laws for everybody, and so Abraham wasn't breaking any rules. There just weren't any rules. A second explanation is that the three men faked eating the milk and meat out of courtesy for Abraham, but they didn't actually eat the milk and meat because they didn't want to violate God's instructions. The crazy thing about that, though, is you're reading that into the text. Can somebody tell me where that is in the text? If I go up to a Chabad rabbi and have a conversation about why they have reached these conclusions, there's nothing in the text that suggests that these conclusions are valid. I noticed that there are plenty of Protestants out there who are much more loyal to Torah and Tanakh than a lot of Jews. A lot of them turn apostate through the school system. They become atheists. I mean, I know Protestants who do shomer negiah. They don't even know what that Hebrew term means, but a lot of them save any physical touching between them and their partner for marriage completely. And from an Orthodox Jewish standpoint, that's just if you're an Orthodox Jew, you generally believe that you should not touch the opposite gender in any way, even to shake their hand. And probably this is the most, I would say, extreme interpretation. And I don't mean extreme necessarily in a negative way, so bear with me here. But basically, you shouldn't touch your potential partner or even shake their hand until you have married them. There's a whole text called the Kol HaTor, which I believe means the voice of the turtle dove, which presents a Jewish perspective on what will happen when Mashiach ben Yosef comes. And I just want to stress this right now to everybody. It's important that we become studious, that we dive into the Word of God. I can't tell you how many Messianics I talk to or Jewish people I talk to, and they do not know the Word of God like at all.